Hello, everybody, and welcome to Beebe Book Buzz. My name is Karen Stern, and I'm here today with my colleagues Katie Riordan and Jacqueline Powers. And we are here to tell you about the books we've been reading recently in hopes that you can find your next great read. Just want to make a little public service announcement before we start and remind you all, if you haven't gotten your Blossoms at Beebe tickets, our big fundraiser with the chamber is coming up, and it's on the 27th of April, Saturday the 27th. Starts at 7, and the tickets are on sale online at blossomsatbeebe.com. So please join us. It's always a good time. Silent auction, music, dancing, drinks, food. Just a good time set by all. So come and join us, and give us a call at the library if you need more information. Today we have stacks of books in front of us, and we're going to start with Katie, who's got some noir thriller stuff to talk about.
Yeah, truly unique books over here. So the first book I would like to talk about is Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This one's kind of like a pulp fiction-y noir mystery thriller set in Mexico City in 1970. This novel illustrates political and social upheaval at the very beginning of it. It starts out at a political protest and an intense view of trying to figure out the government corruption that is currently happening. And I just want to read a little tiny opening of it. It's the smallest little thing at the very beginning. You could easily skip it, but you shouldn't. It says, it is well established that the Hawks are an officially financed, organized, trained, and armed repressive group, the main purpose of which is founded in 1968 and has been controlled of the left. It's controlling the leftist and anti-government students. So this is a telegram that is sent by the United States Department. It's confidential. And it's real. So it's a real telegram that was sent by the United States, the State Department. And it's illustrating how that there is a group in Mexico City called the Hawks. And their whole purpose was to take apart student groups that were trying to rise up against the government. So that's where we start. And this group follows a mysterious disappearance of a woman, and this woman has confidential information that she's trying to share with the newspapers so that we could learn a little bit more about the Mexican government. But the problem is that this book doesn't follow her. It doesn't follow anybody involved in the CIA. It doesn't follow anybody in the government. It follows a low-ranking kind of henchman figure and this woman's neighbor who is a secretary, and both of those two people are looking for her. And that's the whole book, pretty much. It's these two low-ranking people who actually have nothing to do with the main story, but how they are trying to figure out what's happening to the missing woman and just kind of ignoring all the political intrigue that's happening around them.
That's interesting.
So it's a really unique look on a story like this, where we could be getting really, really deep into the political aspect. We could get really deep into the thriller aspect, but instead this secretary who's 30 years old and she's just in love with romance novels is going on and on about how she doesn't want to take care of this cat anymore.
Whose cat?
Oh yes, yeah, that's a good feature. Yeah, she's taking care of the neighbor's cat, and that's what brings her into this. She's taking care of the missing woman's cat, and she really, really wants to not be doing that anymore. She doesn't even like cats, but she's doing it because she needs a little bit of extra cash, and so she's going on this long chase of this woman who has gone missing with the political information in order to stop taking care of this cat.
So that's how the political stuff all gets illuminated?
Illuminated, yeah.
That's
so you
really
learn
interesting.
a lot about this time period, and you learn a lot about the political intrigue from a character who does not care at all about what's happening.
That's
a really interesting perspective.
I like that perspective.
Yeah, so I feel like Silvia Moreno Garcia does this a lot with her books. So even her other books that are here that are more well known, like Mexican Gothic, a lot of the main characters in any of these books are not someone who you'd think would be the one to solve the mystery, or not the one that's going to be solving what's happening in the situation. Like in this one, she's trying to, it's a glitzy and glamorous debutante who's trying to save the situation.
Yeah.
So it's
And-
almost like a bystander.
Yeah.
It's like a bystander's perspective.
Yeah, it's a bystander's perspective of what's happening in the
Mm.
story. And I think that's just like such a unique way to tell a story. And so
Sure.
if you're interested in looking at the world from a slightly different perspective, I would say read Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
So what's the tone of this book? Because if you're saying it's a noir thriller, I mean, you have expectations of a certain kind of tone, but then you're talking about these people who are like the cat sitter. Like, how does that
Who
all?
don't seem noir.
Don't seem very noir at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I can see the henchman maybe a little bit sort of noir,
That's where a lot of it comes in through his gauge and his point of view, where you're seeing him do a lot of things that are kind of more on the darker side, where he's interrogating people to just try to find this woman. But he's also very interesting because he does not have any political leanings left or right. He just kind of fell into this position. He fell into being
he's got a job
member
to
of-
do, being a henchman.
Exactly.
Right.
He's just got a job
Important
to
work.
do. Yeah. Before this, he was in a cult. So he's just very easily indoctrinated, you know? So that's kind of one of the coolest features of this book are both people are going through and doing this hard work where even the cat sitter, she ends up interviewing people and trying to figure out where this woman is and hiding evidence
Right.
eventually. But she's just, they're all doing the things that you would do in a spy thriller with coming at it with, how did I get here? I don't really care about any of this.
Right.
So,
Is it fast paced? It sounds like it would
yeah.
be.
Yeah, it kind of has to be.
It kinda
But,
right.
and also again, like I want to know about the language. Is it like, do we feel the dark,
You
know,
do.
the smoky bars and the whatever? You feel all of that?
You feel all the dark, gritty. It's kind of like it is a detective novel from the 1950s, just with the main
Right.
characters being a cat sitter.
A little bit,
And-
yeah.
a little different.
Non-traditional.
Non-traditional,
Okay.
but they're still just as gritty and
I like that. I like
very
that twist.
into like the romance. It's very interesting because the main character, the secretary, she's into the grittiness of a scandalous romance. That's all she's wanted. So whenever she goes and meets all these people who she's trying to figure out where this woman has gone, she sees her life as all glitz and glamour. So she's going to try to find that that gritty, like scandalous lifestyle herself.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the aspect of this book. So if you're interested in this, I recommend trying to read her other novels because they're all dark. They are filled with a level of like thrill that I just don't think that you can get from a lot of novels.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's kind of
Are
cool.
most of them, so that one's in the 70s, are they
Yes.
mostly historical or are any of them contemporary?
That's the coolest thing about it. So these novels, most of them are set in different time periods. This one's set in the 1950s, and this actually is a outlier of the group. She kind of writes all different types of genres, filling with like the darkness in those genres.
Right.
So this one's actually a mythology-based book about
Oh.
Mayan mythology.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like she has a lot of duality in the areas in which she writes. So that's kind of cool.
Right.
Too. So if you're interested in any type of dark writing, you can see a lot of different types of settings, except for all of it is set in Mexico.
Ah.
Yeah.
Right.
So you
So
get to see
there's
different world.
the darkness and the Mexican setting.
Yeah.
Are the theme throughout.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
definitely.
That's
But they're
very
all different classes. Like this one is set in lower class areas, and the main characters are not from high society at all.
Right.
And this one, it's the 1950s, and they are from high society.
Right. That's
and
right.
That's the
That's
difference.
Yeah.
sort of there's an aristocratic
Yes.
side to this. There's a British
There's a
element to the
to
Mexican
this
Gothic
book.
one.
Yeah, and there's debutantes, and
Right.
they are definitely not debutantes in this book.
There's a nice
Right.
range.
It's a huge range. It's a pretty huge range. So I definitely think if you're going to read one Moreno Garcia book, it's not going to be the same as the next one. It's
That's
just going to
great.
have the same type of feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I will read more. I've read the Mexican Gothic, but I haven't read any of the others.
Yeah,
So I
Gods of
think
Jade and Silver.
that one seems intriguing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go next, and I'm also going to talk about an author and her works, and she's only written two. Her name is Mbola Mbwe, and her books are Behold the Dreamers and How Beautiful We Were. And she's one of many great new voices from the African diaspora that are out there writing like crazy right now. I mean, there's just so many of them. And whether they're writing from their home countries or if they're immigrants who have moved to, say, the UK or the US, They have a whole lot to say about the kind of interplay of cultures in our globalized world. They have, if they're immigrants to this country, they have a lot to say about the interplay of cultures between sort of new immigrants and established American culture. They have a lot to say about the American dream, and that's certainly so. So what we're getting is a lot of sort of big social themes and political themes and things running through these things. But what I like about Mboy is that she is you're not feeling like you're reading a political treatise or anything like that. And in fact, one of the things that intrigued me about her when I was reading around about her, we just read How Beautiful We Were for our book group. She describes her books as love songs.
Oh, wow.
And they might not be what you would think of as love songs. So I kind of wanted to dig around a little bit and see why. So just to give you a little bit of background, she's from Cameroon, which is a West African nation. She came to the States when she was, I think, about 17. Her family gathered money together to send her to Rutgers University. And from there, she went and lived in New York, and she was working for a marketing firm, and then lost her job when the crash came in 2008. So she's been living in New York City ever since. So Behold the Dreamers is set in New York City. She's her second home, and it's definitely, on one level, it's a classic immigrant story. The Cameroonian man, so somebody from her home country, and his family. His name is Jende, and his family. They kind of feel like they've got the chance to really like get their teeth into the American dream when he gets a job as a chauffeur for a wealthy American family man. His name is Clark Edwards. He's an executive at Lehman Brothers. I say Lehman Brothers, and everybody goes, "Oh." So Clark's wife Cindy also gives Nenny, who is Jende's wife, a job in the household as well. So what this becomes is kind of a story of these two couples, an immigrant couple, a very well-established, sort of upper-class white family, whose lives become enmeshed in this household, and each with their own dreams and ideas of what that American dream looks like. And then 2008 happens, and of course Lehman Brothers is the first to come. So she then explores the kind of the crumbling of that and what it means for each of those. I think one of the things that strikes me about Mboy's writing is, in both of these books, is her even-handedness. This book is told from the point of view of the immigrants, but you certainly don't feel that it's only about immigrants or that she's kind of coming down on the side of the immigrants. She is really good at getting at the motivations and displaying them for the reader of all the characters in her books. So you get Clark Edwards, you watch him crumble and you understand why he does and all that sort of stuff. It's not an us and them story.
It's not, yeah.
At all, really, which is kind of surprising when you think about.
He's not the bad guy.
He is not the bad guy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are certain elements
right,
of him
but he's
that
not.
he's not a perfect character. None of them are, but yeah, she's very good at getting that balance right, I think, in both books. So, and then When We Were Beautiful shows us completely the other side. It's set in a fictional African village called Kosawa, in a fictional African country, and their land, Kosawa's land, is being destroyed by a fictional American oil company, right? Which is very much a story
Fictional.
of, right? All of these are fictional, right? This is very much based on, she did a lot of research on, this kind of devastation and degradation by, large companies all over the world. This is really her baby. This book she wrote took her 17 years to write.
Oh, wow.
So she actually was writing this and then wrote this in the middle and then published this. This one's 2017. This one is 2021. So anyway, this book it centers around the story of a family, and in particular she starts out as a young girl. Her name is Tula, the daughter of the family, and Tula is watching friends die, babies die. You know, she hears of this, the history of her people who have lived there for millennia, growing up on, you know, in this beautiful land that where they could swim in the rivers and use the medicinal plants that grew in the soil and eat the food and all of that. And she's growing up in this time when all of that is poisoned, essentially. And so she is, it's the arc of the story is partly about her becoming, she goes off to America, she studies in New York City, and she comes back to as an activist to save her village. So it's also the fact there's also in the middle of all this is this sort of brutal dictatorship, which often occurs in these situations, right? They're living off the spoils of all the oil company money, but they're not protecting their people in any way. In fact, they are often killing them if they stand up and try to fight for their health and well-being, as the characters in this book do. And it's told through the point of view of Tula's family, and also they're interspersed with chapters of the children of the village, who give us over the years the perspective of how both the village declines and how the fight escalates. So that's this one. And I think, you know, you listen to, sorry, that's this one. You listen to the stories of these two books and you think, how is it that she can describe these as love songs? And that was very intriguing to me. And then I read something about her which said that when she first came to the US, and, you know, this 17-year-old girl at Rutgers, and then in New York, in those early years, she was really drawn to country music.
Wow.
And I found that really intriguing. I thought, this, you know, person from this culture who seems, to us anyway, so different and far away, far flung, and she's come to this place, which is Rutgers in New York City, which also doesn't seem very connected to, you know, country music, and yet here she is falling in love with LeAnn Rimes and Dolly Parton and the Dixie Chicks, and you're like, okay, what's going on there? And so she's explaining it, and she's saying, you know, she just was really taken by country music's ability to tell these stories of heartbreak and human drama and the little guy fighting and home, you know, you think about homesickness and all the sadness, but still be songs about love. You know, essentially they were love songs. And if you look at that and you look at these books, it's all in there. You know, this book has the drama of these two marriages that are in crisis. It has financial insecurity. It has that sense of the immigrants missing home, and wondering where they should be, you know, and it's that same drama. And then you get in the When We Were Beautiful, the connection to the land, very, very strong. I mean, all of what Tula does as an activist is because she just feels this deep, deep love for her homeland. And you also get the minutia. One of the best things about this book is the daily life, like of a village, which villages like that probably don't exist very much anymore in Africa. I mean, there are some. This was back set in the 70s, and when there were, and you know, you get this real picture of village life. It was one of my favorite things about it, and through that, again, the love that the author feels for her childhood.
That's often the best part. I read a lot of books that take place in other places for that reason in many cases, because I love the day-to-day stuff.
Exactly.
I love, like,
It's just like
it just takes you so out of yourself, because you're just like, their life is so deeply different than mine,
and so the same, and that's
same,
you know, right?
You can see all the
you know, concerns, everything that worries you in a day is the same thing that worries
it's the same
us in a
it's
day.
the same worries.
It just plays out a little differently.
It just looks different.
You know, in this one, it's like the gossip, like everybody, you hear about things. It's like from your sister's cousin's wife's husband. You know, it's like, and it goes through the village, and you know, everyone knows, and or, you know, just things like that. The love stories, the deaths, the births, all of it is told here. Some of the magic of that is understood to be just part of life is very clear here. So anyway, when you see that and you think about country music, suddenly it all makes sense,
it
and
does make more sense.
it means that even though I tell you that this is probably one of the saddest books I've ever read, there's something about it. If you can love a country song, you can love this book too. And I think that is a really interesting way to look at this author's work. So, Mbolo Mboy. And now,
This was
For
not the
something-
saddest book I've ever read, but
something slightly lighter, maybe?
I mean,
No?
sure.
More dark?
No, it's not. It's not light. But so this is The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels by Janice Hallett, and I'm pretty sure I talked about her last book on here. It was The Twyford Code, and I
Yes.
remember talking about it because it was really, really hard to talk about because it was so like the so much of the plot was good because it was a surprise, and so like I couldn't give anything away, and I don't want to. And this is similar. So, and I enjoyed this one actually significantly more. I liked the other one. I thought it took a little while to get into. This one, you're right into it. But so the previous book, the format was all. I mean, it was technically you would call it epistolary, but it wasn't exactly. It was transcriptions of audio recordings from someone's phone. The whole, pretty much the entire book. This one is it's texts, WhatsApp messages, emails. There's a movie script. There's transcripts of recorded interviews. There's some letters. So it's kind of a little modern take on an epistolary novel. This one is also hard to talk about without giving anything away, but I can give you kind of the gist. So it's 2021, and Amanda Bailey is a journalist and she's a true crime author, and she's looking for her next project. So she lands on this infamous case of the Alperton Angels. It's gruesome, it's sensational, it's fictional, thankfully, but it's the story of it's a cult. There was a cult, a very small cult, that brainwashed a teenager into thinking her baby was the Antichrist.
Oh, wow.
And it ended in a mass suicide, apparently. So the baby survived, but then no one ever knew what happened to the baby. They don't know if it's a boy or a girl. Like, nobody knows. So she's like, the baby would now be 18. So this had happened in 2003. And so she's like, well, the baby would be 18 now. So I'm going to find the baby because what an angle that would be. Like, I'm going to get the interview with the baby when the Alperton Angel baby comes of age. So she starts kind of working on this. And as she starts talking to people, they're like, oh, I just talked to your colleague. And she's like, wait, what? Like, what colleague? So turns out an old rival of hers from school, and like another writer, Oliver, is working on the same case for his own book. So their respective publishers sort of end up getting together and saying, well, they're both taking different angles on this book. They both had kind of a different, we're going to put a different spin on it. So she's like, why don't you like work together sort of, and then we'll market them together kind of as like companions. So that's what's happening. And so they're kind of forced to join together, forced to join forces.
Sounds like a bad idea.
And it's deeply clear that they are never really a team. Like, you're kind of, and you're only getting this again through like text messages and like,
Right. Okay.
so you're like, oh, they're definitely like not telling each other everything. But you don't really know what, like, you don't know what's being held back because you don't get anyone. It's not anyone's perspective,
No,
really.
right.
So
It's all the gaps
it's
between
just all the gaps.
that are
Yes.
That's interesting.
So
The
it's
root
really,
for one
really
over the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really, really twisty, and the author does a really good job of fleshing out Amanda through her various communications. Because, like I said, you're not getting her perspective really. I mean, you get it when she's giving it to other people, but she's clearly ambitious. She's very kind of hard scrabble. She's a real true crime aficionado, and you're not sure you like her. Like, you're not like totally sure you like her, but you can tell she's good at her job, and you respect that. You sort of like, well, all right, she's got there's something in her past that happened in her childhood, and you don't really know what the deal is. She sort of references other people having it easy, kind of, so you get the impression that she did not, that she had to like really try a lot harder than some of the other people, and that's there. She and Oliver, also the other journalist, have this sort of past that you're not clear on. They went to school together. You kind of don't know what happened.
Right.
You don't know, like, did they have a romantic relationship? Was it like a rivalry? Like, you just don't really know. But so Amanda is very kind of, you never know what she looks like or anything. You don't really, I think you find out at some point how old she is, but it's not immediately, like, all those things aren't really immediately clear. She even does a good job fleshing out the secondary characters. So there's two, Oliver being one of them, and then Ellie, who is Amanda's, I think, former assistant. And she's an inspiring true crime author. I think she's in school now, maybe. But she works to, she transcribes some of her interviews. So Amanda records a lot of her interviews, and she does the transcriptions, which is what you read.
Right.
And Ellie's voice is really interesting and fun because you mostly hear her through these little comments she puts in the transcript.
Right.
She'll be like, he's lying here.
Yeah.
Parentheses, or I don't know, I don't trust him. Do you? Like, it's kind of just, so you sort of see her there, and they have some text exchanges and stuff too, but it's a lot of it comes through with just her sort of asides in these transcripts. It was a really interesting kind of, for me anyway, for a little like deep dive into how journalists and writers, true crime, nonfiction writers, work in the modern times, because it's a lot of like, well, I DM'd them on Twitter, and like it's different. It's just
It's
not
not what you think of when you're, traditional journalism was not like that.
Yeah, it just seems very modern.
It's the equivalent of knocking down doors, except it's their
You're-
socials. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
you're finding them online. The lingo was kind of, because they're communicating. She's talking to other authors, she's talking, other writers, other journalists. So they're kind of all talking in their jargon. And so they kept referring to people, presumably subjects in some way, as bods, like a bod, like body.
Oh.
But they weren't dead bodies.
No,
they were
no,
live,
just people,
live
like-
people.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was very intriguing. I was like, bods,
Yeah.
bodies. I mean, this is also set in England, so I don't know if that's a
Yeah,
Britishy thing. I don't
a
know.
little bit maybe. I can see that.
Yeah. So I can't really say anything about the plot. 'Cause
No,
it
no,
really
but
would
so
truly
what's
give it away.
intriguing to me about this is I'm like thinking, okay, so is the mystery? Are there two mysteries here? Is there the mystery of
There's
that
a
there?
lot of mysteries.
There's a
here.
lot of mysteries, and there's a mystery about Oliver and what's her name?
Amanda. Yep.
Yeah, there's like so
There's
it's
lots of mysteries.
Wow.
I think it's really interesting, and it's interesting these two books, yours and Katie's,
Yeah.
being written with these sort of sideways peripheral perspectives,
Definitely.
right?
It's,
Like
you do come at it very sideways.
Very-
and in particular because the whole thing that is happening is, the whole thing they're investigating was 18 years ago. So they're talking to all these people about their memories and,
right.
it was 2003. So it was not the same in terms of like cell phones and things,
Yeah.
being,
So anything could not be true.
Oh, so
It sounds like
yes.
unreliable narrators abound.
Everyone's not,
Yeah.
everyone in this book is unreliable. Everyone's like, I think it was that. I don't know. But she had another book that was not as well reviewed from a couple of years ago, The Appeal. And so one of the reviews I read of it, because I was like, oh, maybe I'll go back and then read that one. One of the reviews was like, you need like a map to like chart out the plot points because it's so complicated.
Right.
And the Twyford Code was kind of like that. I remember kind of being like, wait a minute, at the end and having to kind of parse it a little. This, I felt like I was, at one point I was like, wait, what? And then it does all come together, and I didn't feel like it was as, she brings it together. So you're not sort of finished it trying to connect the dots. Like she does fairly tightly connect it for you at a certain point.
That's a good.
Yeah.
That's good. She's figuring it out.
Yeah.
She's figuring out that she has to connect the dots for people. So
Yeah. The thing that I would want to know with this is whether or not the author did her, like, how did she do her research into what journalists actually do? in
yeah,
this
I don't
case.
know
Yeah.
her. She might be a journalist.
Yeah.
She's a award-winning journalist.
You know what? That makes sense.
And
Yeah.
government
Yeah.
communications writer. So there we are.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. That's really, really interesting.
That sounds intriguing. I'm
Yeah.
not a big mystery person, but I think I would read that. I do love things that are. I mean, I don't know what the new term is for epistolary novel.
Yeah, I don't know what that.
For those who don't know, epistolary just means letters.
Letters,
It's
typically,
written. It's expressed through letters. But these are obviously way more than just letters, and I do love that way of
And
writing.
it's super, because of the format, it's really fast.
Right.
Like
That
I
makes
read
sense.
this super,
Yeah.
super quickly because you're just, and you want to know what happens, and it's, I don't know, it was, I
and all you got to
really
read is
enjoyed
another
it.
text message, and then you're moving on. And,
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, there's not a lot of pages where there's blocks of text.
Right.
I mean, because you're,
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
All right.
I really enjoyed it. So
I like the blood splatter on the.
Yeah, me too.
yeah, yep. Angels.
Now I want to
Angels and
find him.
blood.
I
Yeah,
want
I
to find
know.
the baby.
I know. Oh, the baby.
Oh gosh.
Okay,
Oh, no.
maybe. All right. Anyway, that's probably all we have time for
That
now.
is, and we look at our time.
There we are. So we will see you next time on BB Book Buzz. Thank you for joining us.